Coming to you live, but not really. It is all pomp and no circumstance with Ryder Richards on LetUsThinkAboutIt.com, the amateur hour you should never tune into.
Welcome back. This is Ryder Richards. Today, we're going to continue our exploration of moral language, how language evolves, shifts, and sometimes loses meaning. Now, the word good has transformed over time from an aristocratic self-affirmation to a utilitarian function of moral utility. Oof. But how did this happen? So today we're going to discuss Nietzsche's genealogy of morality, Scheler's concept of ressentiment, and MacIntyre's argument on the loss of meaning in moral language. Now, we're going to tie all this back into Orwellian themes and modern culture wars, and this is just to tie it into the last episode and give us another point of reference. So, here it is. How did good become what it is today? Let's start with Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a master of tracing ideas back to their historical origins, and On the Genealogy of Morality, he makes a radical claim. The word good originally meant noble, not moral. So good was once a term of self-affirmation for the strong, the powerful, the aristocratic, the noble families. It meant strength, health, and beauty. But over time, the lower classes, particularly religious figures, inverted its meaning. Weakness became virtue. Humility became noble. And thus, slave morality was born. And we can do an episode on that in the future. But Nietzsche describes this slave morality as a psychological reversal, a rebranding of moral values by the powerless who resented the powerful. Now, the noble aristocrats once declared, "We're good because we're strong." But over time, the oppressed redefined good to mean meekness, obedience, and suffering. And this shift wasn't just linguistic, it was moral warfare. Nietzsche saw Christianity as a key player in this inversion, turning the powerful into villains and the weak into saints. Now, he framed all this as an act of ressentiment, and that's a term that brings us to Max Scheler. Max Scheler picks up really where Nietzsche left off. Now, in his work, Ressentiment, the book by that name, he deepens the analysis by looking at modern morality. Scheler argues that the problem is no longer just about power struggles between the nobles and the oppressed. It's that morality itself has been corrupted by utility. So modern morality is no longer about greatness, it's about usefulness. Good is no longer a noble quality, it has become a function. Instead of asking, who is great, modern ethics asks, what is useful? Now, this shift aligns very well with capitalism, democracy, and utilitarianism, all of which reinforce the idea that morality serves a purpose rather than existing as an inherent aristocratic quality. Now, in this world, mediocrity is rewarded and nobility eroded. Nietzsche saw morality as a battlefield. Scheler saw it as a slow decay into utility. But MacIntyre, the next guy, takes an even more drastic position. We've lost the ability to even talk about morality coherently. So, Alasdair MacIntyre, in his book After Virtue around 1980, he makes a troubling claim. We still use words like good and virtue, but they have been stripped of their historical meanings. He argues that modern society suffers from moral fragmentation. Unlike Nietzsche, who blamed power struggles, or Scheler, who blamed on utility, MacIntyre blames cultural collapse. We no longer share a common moral foundation. Instead, we're left with a collection of moral terms that no longer mean what they once did. People argue about ethics, but their arguments rest on different historical foundations without realizing it. Now, for MacIntyre, the problem isn't just that morality has changed, it's that it's become incoherent. Our ethical discussions are like playing chess with pieces from Monopoly and rules from poker, right? Where nothing fits together. And this brings us to another modern parallel. So this is Orwell and the Culture Wars. So Michael Cuenco, he talks about Orwell's 1984 and the structural collapse of language. So this is in his essay, Victory is Not Possible. And he ties this kind of moral fragmentation in. Now, in Orwell's world, language is controlled, twisted, and emptied of meaning. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Cuenco argues that modern politics function the same way. The constant war over identity, culture, and meaning actually prevents any real moral progress. The wars are just maintaining a steady state. He points to Orwell's 2 Minutes Hate as an example. In there, people are whipped into a frenzy, not over any reasoned debate. It's just emotional. It's over emotional allegiance to the tribe. Now, this isn't about moral progress at all. It's just about maintaining and keeping a system intact. And that's where we are today, a world where moral language no longer has a shared meaning, where concept creep has blurred the boundaries, and where semantic drift has rendered ethical discussions fruitless. So, yeah, where do we go from here? And what can we take from this little, very quick podcast? Well, one, Nietzsche showed us that good was originally about power and nobility, but it was inverted by the weak. Scheler warned that good had further decayed into mere usefulness, stripping it of nobility. And MacIntyre showed that we have lost the ability to even define good because modern moral language is broken. Now, Orwell and Cuenco, or Cuenco through Orwell, remind us that this isn't an accident. It's a structural collapse of meaning reinforced by the culture war and people in power to maintain the status quo. So where does that leave us? I think what I want everyone to take from today, at least what I'm taking from this, is that the word good, even the concept of it, has inverted. The nobility or aristocrats are now stereotypically seen as evil, while many who rant and scream and say awful things announce a claim to the good. And this power inversion mirrors semantic inversion, right? What you value may not be what you value, right? You might just be hanging on to a word here. Now, as my therapist has told me, and that's why this is kind of personal, is you need to stop wanting to be a good person, because who even knows what that means? It's a value thing. And then the other part is just work on being a whole person. But you see what she had to do there? She had to provide me with a new word, a definition, a new definition that would actually free me from my alignment fixation with something that was harming me. So that's it for today's episode. All right, sorry to end on such a heavy note, but thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review. It helps others find the podcast. Until next time, keep questioning, keep thinking, keep redefining what good really means.